The three massive ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like silver daggers cutting through blue silk. Inside the lead vessel, Ambassador Crixital pressed his four-fingered hand against the observation window and let out what could only be described as a snort of amusement. Below him stretched endless fields of green and brown patches, dotted with primitive structures that the humans apparently called farms. "Look at this mess," Crixtal muttered to his aide, pointing at the chaotic patchwork of different-colored crops. "They still grow food in actual dirt, can you believe it?" His aide, a younger Velthari named Zephyron, shook his elongated head in disbelief. "Sir, our intelligence reports say they've been doing this for over 10,000 years. The same way, in the ground. Barbaric," Crixtal replied, his silver eyes gleaming with superiority. "No wonder they only recently achieved space travel. While we've been perfecting agriculture in controlled environments for 50,000 years, they're still playing in the mud like children." The shuttle landed at what humans called the International Agricultural Center in Geneva. As the Velthari delegation stepped out, they were joined by representatives from 6 other galactic empires. The Christek Consortium had sent their best agricultural engineers. The Nitrogen Lords brought their atmospheric farming specialists. Each empire had dominated food production in their sector of the galaxy for millennia. They all shared the same expression when they saw the Human Welcome Committee approaching. These Earthlings looked so ordinary. No advanced genetic modifications. No breathing apparatus for optimized oxygen intake. Just regular biological beings in simple clothing, walking on legs that seemed almost fragile compared to the various appendages of their galactic visitors. Dr. Hyunwoo Park stepped forward, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and dirt still visible under his fingernails. "Welcome to Earth," he said through the universal translator. "We're honored to host the first Galactic Agricultural Summit." Crixtal barely nodded. In his culture, getting your hands dirty was a sign of low status. Only the lowest workers touched actual soil. Leaders like him commanded vast hydroponic towers from climate-controlled offices, never needing to see or smell real Earth. The tour began immediately. Dr. Park led the delegation through what he proudly called their demonstration farms. The aliens followed, their various recording devices capturing everything for later analysis and, undoubtedly, amusement back home. "This is our rice field," Dr. Park explained, gesturing toward a flooded area where green shoots emerged from muddy water. "We flood the fields during growing season, then drain them for harvest. The water provides nutrients and controls weeds naturally." The Christek representative whispered something to his colleague that made them both laugh. Their technology could produce the same amount of rice in a sterile chamber 1/10 the size, using synthetic nutrients and artificial light, with zero contamination risk. "And here," Dr. Park continued, seemingly unaware of their mockery, "we practice crop rotation. After rice, we plant beans. The beans add nitrogen back to the soil, which helps the next crop grow better." More whispers and chuckles from the alien delegation. Why would anyone need to rotate crops when you could simply adjust the chemical composition of your growing medium instantly? These humans were like someone trying to cook over a wood fire when fusion reactors existed. The tour continued. For hours, they saw fields of corn, wheat, and vegetables growing in actual soil under the natural sun. They watched human farmers using machines that looked ancient compared to galactic technology. Some farmers were even working with their hands, physically touching plants and dirt. "Primitive doesn't begin to describe this," one of the Nitrogen Lords commented quietly to his companion. "It's like watching cavemen trying to make fire." But the real shock came during the evening presentations. The human delegates stood up one by one to share their agricultural achievements. Dr. Park presented statistics about Earth's food production, talking about things like seasonal variations, weather patterns, and soil health, as if these uncontrollable variables were somehow advantages. "Our crops adapt to changing conditions," he explained with obvious pride. "Each season is different, but our plants learn to handle whatever nature brings." The aliens exchanged looks that clearly said, "Why would you want unpredictable results when you could have perfect consistency?" Then came the moment that would be remembered across the galaxy. A small, elderly woman walked slowly to the podium, Her name was Ji-Hai Kim, and she had been farming for over 60 years. Her hands were weathered and stained from decades of working in soil. To the aliens, she looked like a relic from a prehistoric age. "Honored guests," she began in a voice that trembled slightly with age but carried deep conviction. "I want to talk to you about something we call harmony with nature." That's when the laughter started. It began as quiet chuckles from the back of the room but quickly spread through the alien delegation like a virus. Harmony with nature? These advanced civilizations had conquered nature thousands of years ago. They controlled every aspect of food production in sterile, perfect environments. The idea of working with chaotic, unpredictable natural systems seemed absurd. Ji-Hai Kim continued despite the obvious mockery. "We don't fight against the earth. We work with it. We listen to what the soil needs, what the plants want, what the insects and birds are telling us. Everything is connected." The translator struggled with her words. Advanced galactic languages had no direct translation for concepts like listening to soil or what plants want. The closest approximation came out as primitive mysticism and emotional agriculture. The laughter grew louder. Ambassador Crickstall didn't even try to hide his amusement. "Emotional agriculture," he repeated to his aide. "As if plants have feelings. As if dirt has wisdom. These humans are even more backward than we thought." When the presentations ended, the real purpose of the alien visit became clear. They hadn't come to learn from humanity. They had come to dominate it. "People of Earth," Ambassador Crickstall announced during the closing ceremony, "we offer you a great opportunity. Join our agricultural collective. We will modernize your food production, eliminate the chaos of natural farming, and bring you into the galactic age." His words sounded generous, but everyone in the room understood the threat underneath. "Abandon these primitive methods," he continued, "or face economic isolation when our superior farming methods make your products worthless in the galactic market." The human delegates looked at each other with expressions the aliens couldn't read. Dr. Park finally stood up. "We appreciate your offer," he said carefully. "We need time to consider such an important decision." The aliens saw this as confirmation of human weakness and indecision. In their cultures, strength meant making instant decisions and sticking to them regardless of consequences. Asking for time to think was what inferior beings did when they knew they were beaten. As the alien ships prepared to leave Earth, Ambassador Crickstall felt satisfied. These humans would come around soon enough. They had no choice. Their laughably primitive farming methods couldn't compete with galactic agricultural technology. Within a year, maybe 2 at most, they would be begging to join the collective. What none of the aliens noticed as they departed was the subtle exchange of glances between the human delegates, or the way Dr. Park quietly nodded to Ji-Hai Kim, or how the elderly farmer's weathered face showed not the defeat the aliens expected, but something that looked almost like anticipation. The galaxy's greatest agricultural powers had just made the mistake of underestimating farmers who had been perfecting their craft for 10,000 years. They were about to learn that sometimes the oldest methods hide the most advanced secrets. 300 feet beneath the rolling hills of rural Korea, Dr. Min-Ho Lee wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled at what most people would consider impossible. Around him stretched a vast underground chamber that defied every law of conventional agriculture. The air hummed with life in ways that would make those arrogant aliens above ground choke on their laughter. "Status report on Section C7. Min-Ho called out to his assistant Jun-Woo, who was monitoring a wall of screens that displayed thousands of data points in real time. "Sir, the tomato fish integration is exceeding all projections again," Jun-Woo replied, his voice filled with excitement. "The fish waste is feeding the plants so efficiently that we're getting triple the normal tomato yield, and the fish are growing twice as fast as in traditional aquaculture." Min-Ho nodded, but his attention was already shifting to the next marvel in their underground paradise. Above them, the world thought humanity was still playing in dirt like children. Down here, they had created something that made galactic hydroponic systems look like Stone Age tools. The facility stretched for miles in every direction, carved out of an old military bunker system that had been abandoned decades ago. But instead of storing weapons, these tunnels now housed the most advanced agricultural system ever conceived. And the beautiful part was that it looked nothing like the sterile, mechanical farms the aliens were so proud of. Walking through the main corridor felt like strolling through a living dream. Vines heavy with vegetables spiraled up support columns that were actually living trees, their roots extending deep into nutrient-rich water systems below. Schools. A fish swam in clear tubes that ran along the ceiling, their waste being filtered and processed by beneficial bacteria before flowing to feed the plants. Dr. Lee called out researcher So Young from the mushroom section. The fungi network is showing some interesting behavior. It's actually learning to predict what nutrients the vegetable crops will need next week. This was the secret that made their system so revolutionary. Instead of controlling every variable like the aliens did, they had created a living network where everything communicated with everything else. The mushrooms didn't just grow in isolated containers. They formed vast underground networks that connected to plant roots across acres of growing space, sharing information and nutrients in ways that scientists were still trying to fully understand. Minho stopped at one of his favorite observation points, where a glass wall revealed a cross-section of their integrated system. At the bottom level, fish swam in crystal-clear pools. Above them, their waste flowed through carefully designed channels where beneficial bacteria broke it down into perfect plant food. The middle levels housed vegetables growing in living soil that was actually composed of beneficial microorganisms, worms, and composted organic matter. Above that, fruit trees reached toward LED lights that mimicked the sun's spectrum perfectly. But the real magic happened in the connections between all these levels. Root systems from the trees extended down through multiple floors, creating living pillars that transported nutrients and information throughout the entire system. Insects moved freely between levels, pollinating flowers and controlling pests, naturally. Even the air was part of the system, with plants processing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen in carefully balanced cycles. "Sir," Junwoo approached with a tablet showing production figures. "If our calculations are correct, this single facility could feed a city of 50,000 people using less energy than a conventional farm uses to feed 5,000. The numbers were staggering, but Minho wasn't surprised. They had spent 20 years perfecting this system while the galaxy's agricultural empires were busy making their sterile farms more sterile. Every component of their underground biosphere served multiple purposes. The fish provided protein and fertilizer. The plants cleaned the air and water while producing food. The beneficial insects and bacteria kept everything healthy without any chemical inputs. Even the LED lights were powered by biogas produced from organic waste within the system. What made Minho proudest was that their system actually got better over time. Unlike the alien farms that required constant inputs of energy and synthetic materials, their underground biosphere became more efficient and productive with each passing season. The living networks learned and adapted, creating new connections and optimizing themselves in ways that no computer could program. Meanwhile, 300 feet above his head, farmer Yoonji Song was tending to what looked like perfectly ordinary rice paddies. To any orbital scan or casual observer, her farm appeared exactly like thousands of others across Korea. The rice grew in flooded fields, following patterns that had been used for centuries. Traditional farming at its most basic. What the scans couldn't detect were the hidden connections beneath the surface. Yoonji's rice roots didn't just grow down into mud. They connected to access points that linked directly to Minho's underground network. Nutrients flowed up from the facility below, supercharging her crops in ways that looked completely natural from above. Her rice yields were mysteriously high, but not so high as to attract attention. The beauty of their deception was, in its simplicity, every surface farm connected to the underground network looked normal from space. The aliens' sensors detected standard crop signatures, standard growth patterns, standard everything. They had no idea that beneath Korea's countryside lay a biological, computer network more sophisticated than anything in their galactic empires. Yoonji wasn't alone in maintaining this illusion. Across Earth, Thousands of farmers were tending to surface crops that appeared traditionally primitive, while secretly connected to similar underground facilities. In Brazil, coffee farms hid vast subterranean growing chambers. In India, wheat fields concealed root networks that extended for miles underground. In Canada, what looked like simple vegetable gardens were actually access points to biological systems that could feed entire provinces. The coordination required for this deception was itself a marvel of human cooperation. Encrypted communication networks, hidden beneath standard agricultural data transmissions, kept all the facilities synchronized. When one underground system discovered a new beneficial bacterial strain, that information spread to every connected facility within hours. When a farm in Africa developed a more efficient nutrient cycling process, farmers in Europe were implementing it within days. Dr. Min-Ho Lee checked his watch and smiled. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show the galaxy what human agriculture could really accomplish. The aliens had given them an ultimatum, thinking Earth's farmers would cower and submit to superior technology. They had no idea that while they were perfecting sterile control systems, humanity had created something far more powerful, a living network that grew stronger with every passing day. The underground facility around him pulsed with life, every organism contributing to a symphony of growth and abundance that would soon reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. Above ground, the aliens were probably congratulating themselves on intimidating primitive Earth farmers. Below ground, those same farmers were preparing to demonstrate that sometimes the most advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Ambassador Crixtal stared at his ship's display screen with growing confusion and irritation. The numbers didn't make sense. According to their trade intelligence reports, Earth's food exports had somehow tripled in just 6 months, not doubled. Not increased by 50%, tripled. And yet their orbital scanners showed the same primitive patchwork of small farms they had observed during their first visit. Run the scans again, he ordered his aide, Zephyron. There must be some error in our equipment. Sir, we've run them 17 times, Zephyron replied nervously. The readings are consistent. Earth is somehow producing 3 times more food than should be possible from their visible farmland. Crixtal's 4-fingered hands clenched into fists. This was supposed to be a simple return visit to collect Earth's surrender. The humans should have been begging to join the Galactic Agricultural Collective by now, desperate to modernize their primitive farming methods. Instead, they were somehow outproducing worlds with advanced hydroponic systems. Maybe they've hidden new farms underground? Suggested another officer. Impossible, Crixtal snorted. Our deep core sensors would detect any significant subterranean agriculture. These readings show massive food production coming from the same small surface plots we saw before. The Velthari weren't alone in their confusion. Ships from the Christek Consortium, the Nitrogen Lords, and 4 other galactic agricultural empires had arrived expecting to witness Earth's economic collapse. Instead, their sensors were detecting agricultural output that defied everything they understood about farming efficiency. Incoming transmission from Earth, announced the communications officer. It's being broadcast on all galactic frequencies. The main screen flickered to life, showing the same elderly human woman who had spoken about harmony with nature during their first visit. Ji-Hai Kim looked exactly the same, still wearing simple farming clothes with dirt under her fingernails. But something was different about her expression. Where before she had seemed humble and almost apologetic, now she radiated quiet confidence. Greetings to our galactic neighbors, she began, her weathered face filling the screen. 6 months ago you offered to help us modernize our agriculture. Today we would like to show you what human farming can really accomplish. Crixtal felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in her tone that he didn't like. Something that suggested the humans had been playing a game all along. We invite your representatives to witness a demonstration, Ji-Hai continued. Come to the coordinates we're transmitting. Come see what Earth's farmers have been growing while you've been waiting for our surrender. Within hours, shuttles from 7 different alien empires were descending toward a seemingly ordinary farm in the Korean countryside. From above, it looked exactly like thousands of other Earth farms, Small fields of rice, vegetables, and fruit trees scattered across rolling hills. Nothing impressive. Nothing that could explain the impossible production figures their sensors were detecting. The alien delegations gathered in a clearing where Ji-Hae Kim stood waiting with several other human farmers. To the aliens, they looked like a group of primitives about to demonstrate some quaint local custom. Ambassador Krixtal checked his personal scanner one more time, confirming that this small farm couldn't possibly be producing the massive food output their ships were detecting. "Before we begin," Ji-Hae said, "I want you to understand something. When you laughed at our methods 6 months ago, you made a mistake. You assumed that what you could see was all there was to see." She gestured to the peaceful farmland around them. "This is 1 hectare of land. According to your calculations, it should produce enough rice to feed about 20 people per year. Would you like to know how many people it actually feeds?" The aliens waited, their various recording devices capturing everything for analysis. 3,000 people, Ji-Hae said simply. "And it does much more than just grow food." Before anyone could react, she pressed a small device in her hand. The ground beneath their feet began to rumble gently. Across the farm, sections of what had appeared to be solid earth started to open like massive flower petals. The soil itself seemed to be folding back, revealing gleaming surfaces beneath. "What in the name of the void?" Krixtal whispered as the transformation continued. The rice paddies they had been standing next to, moments before, now revealed themselves as cleverly disguised access points to vast underground chambers. Crystal clear water flowed through visible channels below ground, carrying nutrients between different levels of a complex system that extended deep into the earth. But the real shock came when the root systems began to expose themselves. What had looked like simple plant roots on the surface were actually parts of a living network that stretched as far as the eye could see. Massive root structures emerged from the earth like the skeletal remains of some enormous creature, forming bridges and connections between distant parts of the farm. "By the great crystals," breathed the Kristec representative as beneficial insects began emerging from hidden breeding facilities built into hillsides. Not just a few insects, but clouds of them, each species perfectly adapted to specific roles in the farm's ecosystem. Dr. Min-Ho Lee stepped forward, his clothes still bearing the marks of his underground work. "Honored guests, what you're seeing is something we call integrated ecosystem farming. While you've been perfecting sterile environments that require constant inputs of energy and synthetic materials, we've been developing living systems that become more productive over time." He gestured to the transformed landscape around them. "Every organism you see serves multiple functions. The fish in those underground streams provide protein for human consumption, but their waste also fertilizes the plants above. The insects you see emerging pollinate our crops, but they also control pests naturally and process organic waste into valuable nutrients." The aliens stared in stunned silence as more of the farm's hidden systems revealed themselves. Fruit trees that had appeared to be randomly scattered were actually carefully positioned nodes in a living network that shared resources and information across the entire farm. Underground chambers housed everything from mushroom cultivation to protein-rich algae production, all connected by living root systems that functioned like a biological internet. "Your hydroponic systems," Dr. Min-Ho continued, "require you to constantly input energy, nutrients, and materials. Our systems actually produce surplus energy. We generate more clean water than we consume. We create more beneficial soil than we use. Every year, our farms become more productive and more sustainable." Ambassador Krixtal felt his worldview crumbling as he watched the demonstration continue. The small, primitive farm had transformed into something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction story. But it wasn't just impressive technology. It was alive in ways that his empire's sterile growing facilities could never be. "You see," Ji-Hae Kim said, her voice carrying across the transformed landscape, "each of our farms is what you might call a terraforming engine. We don't just grow food. We rebuild ecosystems, clean polluted soil and water, capture carbon from the atmosphere, and create habitats for beneficial wildlife. Every season makes our farms stronger and more productive. The implications hit the alien delegations like a physical blow. Their industrial agricultural methods suddenly looked not just primitive, but destructive by comparison. They had been strip mining worlds and depleting resources to maintain their food production, while the humans had created systems that actually improved their environment over time. How long? Crystal asked, his voice barely a whisper. How long have you been hiding this from us? Ji-hee Kim smiled, and for the first time it wasn't a humble farmer's smile. It was the smile of someone who had just revealed the greatest secret in galactic history. We haven't been hiding anything, she replied. We've been growing it. The first crack in the galactic agricultural empire appeared on a small mining world called Zerion 7. For 3 centuries, the planet had been importing expensive food from the Velthari Empire, paying with rare crystals extracted from their dying core. Their monthly food bill consumed nearly 60% of their entire planetary income, leaving the population barely surviving on processed nutrition blocks that tasted like cardboard and provided just enough calories to keep workers functional. Then Earth's first trade ship arrived. What do you mean the price is 90% lower? Asked Zerion 7's trade minister, staring at the human cargo manifest in disbelief. There must be some mistake. Captain Donghyun Park smiled as he watched workers unload crates of fresh vegetables, fruits, and grains from his ship's hold. No mistake. Earth's new agricultural systems produce so much surplus that we can sell at cost and still make a decent profit. Plus, these aren't just nutrition blocks. This is real food that actually tastes good. Word spread across Zerion 7 within hours. For the first time in living memory, families could afford fresh vegetables instead of synthetic paste. Children who had never tasted real fruit bit into apples and wept from joy. The planet's entire economy shifted overnight as people suddenly had money to spend on things other than basic survival. But Earth's food shipments came with something even more valuable than low prices: environmental restoration. The organic waste from Earth's crops, instead of being worthless garbage, actually improved Zerion 7's contaminated soil. Areas where Earth's compost was spread began showing signs of life for the first time in decades. Send a message to Earth, the trade minister ordered. We want to hire their farmers, not just to sell us food, but to teach us how to grow our own. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds within the first month. The Crystech Consortium watched in horror as their client planets began canceling food contracts that had been in place for millennia. The Nitrogen Lords saw their carefully controlled market monopoly crumble as cheap, high-quality Earth food flooded galactic trade routes. Ambassador Crixtal paced his ship's bridge like a caged animal, watching market reports stream in from across the Velthari Empire. How is this possible? He demanded. 47 worlds have canceled their food imports this week alone. 47. His aide Zephyron pulled up holographic displays showing the devastating numbers. Sir, Earth's food is so much cheaper and better quality that our clients can't justify the expense anymore. Worse, some of our own worlds are starting to question why they're paying premium prices for inferior products. The true scope of the disaster became clear when agricultural scientist Dr. Sujin Choi arrived at Velthari Prime, the Empire's homeworld, leading Earth's first agricultural assessment team. What she found there made her stomach turn with disgust and pity. The planet's surface was dominated by massive hydroponic towers that stretched toward the sky like metal mountains. From a distance, they looked impressive and technological. Up close, they revealed the horrifying truth about galactic agriculture. These facilities are dying, Dr. Sujin reported to her team as they examined the base of one tower. The soil beneath them is completely dead. Not just depleted, actually toxic from centuries of chemical runoff. Her team took soil samples that confirmed their worst fears. The Velthari had been so focused on sterile, controlled environments that they had poisoned the very ground their towers stood on. Toxic chemicals from their synthetic nutrient production had seeped into groundwater, creating dead zones where nothing could grow naturally. Dr. Choi called team member Kyung Ho from the water analysis station. You need to see these readings. The water table is contaminated with industrial compounds that won't break down naturally for thousands of years. The environmental damage wasn't limited to Velthari Prime. As Earth's assessment teams spread across the galaxy, they discovered that every major agricultural empire had made the same mistakes. In their rush to maximize production and control every variable, they had created ecological disasters on a galactic scale. The Crystech Consortium's mineral synthesis farms had strip-mined entire continents, leaving behind barren landscapes that looked like the surface of dead moons. The nitrogen lords had pumped so many artificial chemicals into their atmosphere that their homeworld's air was becoming unbreathable even for their own species. "It's worse than we thought," Dr. Sujin transmitted back to Earth from her third assessment mission. "These civilizations haven't just failed to develop sustainable agriculture. They've actively destroyed their ability to feed themselves naturally. Without constant inputs of rare materials and massive energy consumption, their entire food production system will collapse." The implication sent shockwaves through galactic politics. Worlds that had seemed wealthy and powerful were revealed to be environmental disasters held together by exploitation of other planets. The great agricultural empires had been strip mining their client worlds to maintain unsustainable farming methods that grew weaker over time instead of stronger. On Earth, emergency meetings were held as requests for help poured in from across the galaxy. Planets that had been arrogant and dismissive 6 months earlier were now desperately begging for assistance. The most humiliating moment came when Ambassador Krixtal himself requested a private meeting with Ji-Hai Kim. The proud alien who had openly mocked human farmers now stood in her modest farmhouse, his silver eyes downcast with shame. "Honorable farmer," he began, the translator struggling with concepts of humility that barely existed in Velthari culture. "My empire is facing difficulties. Our food production systems are failing faster than we can repair them. Our people are beginning to starve." Ji-Hee Kim listened without interrupting, her weathered hands folded calmly in her lap. When Krixtal finished his desperate plea for help, she was quiet for a long moment. "You laughed at us," she said finally. "You called our methods primitive. Mysticism. You threatened to destroy our economy if we didn't abandon everything we had learned over thousands of years." Krixtal flinched as if struck. "Yes, we were wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. I understand if you refuse to help us after how we treated you." But Ji-Hai Kim's response surprised him completely. Instead of the gloating or revenge he expected, she simply nodded and said, "When do you want our farmers to arrive?" The old woman's kindness broke something inside the proud ambassador. "You would help us? After everything we said and did?" "Of course," Ji-Hai replied with a gentle smile. "That's what farmers do. We help things grow, even in poisoned soil. Especially in poisoned soil." Within weeks, Earth's agricultural restoration teams were working on dozens of alien worlds, teaching sustainable farming methods to civilizations that had forgotten such knowledge ever existed. The galaxy's former agricultural empires became students, learning from the humans they had once considered primitive. But the real transformation wasn't just in farming techniques. It was in understanding that true strength came not from controlling nature but from working with it. The galactic empires had built their power on exploitation and depletion. Earth was showing them how to build abundance that grew stronger with each passing season. The age of agricultural imperialism was ending. The age of ecological cooperation had begun. The morning sun cast long shadows across what had once been the most polluted planet in the Velthari Empire. Farmer Yunji Song knelt in soil that 2 years ago had been nothing but toxic sludge, running rich black earth through her fingers with the same wonder she had felt as a child in her grandmother's garden back on Earth. "The earthworms are returning," she called out to her mixed team of human farmers and Velthari agricultural students. "Look at this soil structure. It's actually becoming alive again." Her students gathered around, aliens and humans working side by side in a scene that would have been impossible to imagine just 2 years earlier. Young Velthari scientist, Kethryn, whose silver skin now bore permanent stains from working in real dirt, examined the soil sample with genuine excitement. "Teacher Yunji," he said, using the respectful title that had replaced the old hierarchical forms of address, "the underground root networks are connecting across the entire valley now. The fungal systems are talking to each other just like you said they would." Yunji smiled. remembering how shocked the Velthari had been when she first explained that plants could communicate through underground networks. Their sterile hydroponic systems had eliminated all the natural connections that made ecosystems work as living communities rather than isolated production units. This planet, Velthari Secundus, had been declared dead by their own environmental scientists. Centuries of industrial farming had left the soil so contaminated that nothing would grow. The massive hydroponic towers that had once fed billions now stood empty, their skeletal frames serving as reminders of what happened when civilizations tried to completely separate themselves from nature. But Yunji had seen potential where others saw only devastation. Working with Earth's restoration techniques and the eager help of Velthari students who were hungry to learn something their civilization had forgotten, she had begun the slow process of bringing the planet back to life. The key had been understanding that healing damaged ecosystems required patience and cooperation, not force and control. Instead of trying to impose artificial solutions, they worked with the planet's remaining natural systems, coaxing them back to health like a skilled doctor treating a patient. The amazing thing, Yunji explained to a group of visiting dignitaries from across the galaxy, is that we're not just growing food here. We're rebuilding an entire world's ability to support life. Every year this planet becomes more beautiful, more diverse, more capable of sustaining itself. The dignitaries included representatives from former agricultural empires that had once dominated their sectors of the galaxy through technological superiority and resource extraction. Now they came to learn from farmers they had previously dismissed as primitives. Ambassador Krikstal, who had become one of Earth's most dedicated students, gestured toward the thriving landscape around them. 2 years ago, I would have said this was impossible. Our scientists insisted that once soil was this damaged, it could never recover. We were preparing to abandon this world entirely. Your scientists were thinking like engineers, Yunji replied gently. They saw a broken machine that needed parts replaced. We saw a sick patient that needed care and time to heal itself. The transformation wasn't limited to Velthari Secundus. Across the galaxy, similar restoration projects were turning environmental disasters into thriving ecosystems. Former mining worlds were becoming gardens. Planets that had been stripped of their topsoil were developing rich agricultural systems that actually improved with each growing season. But the most remarkable change was happening on Earth itself, where the reformed Galactic Council had chosen to hold its meetings. Instead of the sterile conference rooms and artificial environments that had characterized galactic politics for millennia, the new council met in natural settings that demonstrated the principles they were learning to embrace. Today's meeting was taking place in Jihai Kim's farmyard, the same place where she had first demonstrated Earth's hidden agricultural systems. The elderly farmer, now recognized as one of the galaxy's most influential philosophers, sat on a simple wooden bench surrounded by representatives from hundreds of worlds. Honored friends, she began, her voice carrying the same quiet strength that had once challenged galactic empires. I want to talk to you about the difference between wisdom and cleverness. The assembled delegates, many of whom had traveled across the galaxy to hear her speak, leaned forward with the attention they had once reserved for military briefings and economic reports. For thousands of years, your civilizations grew more and more clever. You built magnificent technologies, conquered nature, controlled every variable you could measure. You were so clever that you forgot to be wise. A young delegate from the former Christech Consortium raised her hand. Teacher, Jihi, what is the difference? Cleverness tries to control everything, the old farmer replied. Wisdom understands that some things cannot be controlled, only guided. Cleverness sees the world as a machine to be optimized. Wisdom sees it as a living system to be nurtured, and I gestured to the thriving farm around them, where alien and human children played together among fruit trees that had been planted by refugees from a dozen different worlds. Your agricultural empires were incredibly clever. You maximized short-term production, eliminated variables, created perfectly predictable results, but you weren't wise enough to ask what you were losing in the process. The delegates nodded, many of them thinking about their own worlds where sterile efficiency had replaced the messy complexity of natural systems. Earth's farmers weren't more advanced than you. Jihai continued. We were just wise enough to remember that we are part of nature, not separate from it. We learned to work with forces we couldn't control instead of trying to eliminate them. Dr. Minho Lee, who had become the galaxy's leading expert on integrated ecosystem design, stood up from the audience. What Teacher Jihai is describing isn't just agricultural philosophy. It's a completely different way of thinking about technology and progress. He pointed to a nearby section of the farm where traditional-looking rice paddies were actually sophisticated biological computers, processing information and making decisions through living root networks that spanned continents. We didn't abandon technology, he explained. We learned to make technology that works with life instead of against it. Our systems become more powerful over time because they're alive and growing, not because we add more components. The revelation was still sinking in for many of the galactic representatives. Humanity had achieved something that violated their fundamental understanding of how progress worked. Instead of becoming more complex and artificial over time, Earth's systems had become more sophisticated while remaining natural. Ambassador Crickstal spoke for many when he said, "We spent millennia trying to prove we were superior to nature. You spent the same time learning to be part of it. And somehow your approach made you more powerful than all our empires combined." Jihai Kim smiled, the same gentle expression she had worn when offering help to the beings who had once mocked her. "We didn't seek power," she said. "We sought harmony. The power came naturally, like fruit growing on a healthy tree." As the sun set over the farm, casting golden light across fields where former enemies now worked together to heal wounded worlds, the galaxy's representatives began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a new form of agriculture, or even a new technology. It was a new way of being in the universe. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through superior weapons or advanced machines. They had transformed it through the patient application of wisdom that treated every world, every ecosystem, every relationship as a living system worthy of care and respect. The age of galactic empires was ending. The age of the galactic garden had begun,